Big thanks to Cardmarket for sponsoring today's video. Alright, hello everyone and welcome to a brand new video. Today's video is going to be a little bit different than other videos that I usually do. Today's video is going to be how to survive in the OP-13 meta game. You see, OP-13 turns the entire meta on its head, and unfortunately, it's a very dull meta where we basically have two decks in Ace and Emu running around like fucking wildfire, taking up 95% of the meta game. If you're going into a tournament, you can expect to play basically against these decks only and nothing else for 10 rounds straight. I know it's awful, it's horrendous, everybody fucking hates it, but that's where we're at right now. And as other decks just aren't that relevant anymore because they're getting power crept out, or they have a bad Emu matchup, or they have a bad Ace matchup, and they're basically becomes unplayable. We, in today's video, have a list of cards that can help those decks fight back. You see, every color has some sort of hacks that can help either the Ace or the Emu matchup. And you can just throw all these cards into a deck, and then boom, all of a sudden, you can maybe, instead of going 20-80 against fucking Ace, you can go like 60-40, and maybe it's fine, because you have a 60, like a 40-60 Emu matchup. I don't know, like, as long as you're like low-key favored and you don't auto-lose against one of them, you are technically relevant. And I'm trying to encourage as many people as possible to play non-Ace and Emu decks so that we can move into a healthier metagame as soon as possible. I'm going to show you the cards. I'm going to explain exactly why they're good and why you should put them into your deck. Let's jump straight into it. So I have made here, we're on the same for some reason, but we have all the colors here and we have their respective staples. We're going to go over them and why they're played in certain decks and why you might want to play them in your decks. Starting with black. We're just going to go left from right here. We have St. Marcus Mars here. This looks weird because it's just like weird, right? It's an Emu card. Why would you put it in here? It's not really a staple if it's just played in Emu, right? But it isn't actually just played in Emu. Mars somehow is making his way into other decks as just a unremovable blocker that can KO a 5-cost or less. The fact that he's just an unremovable blocker makes him really powerful against a lot of removal decks, right? You can put this thing in Sabo, for example, play it off Dragon, and boom, all of a sudden you pop the 5-cost and you've established a blocker that literally just can't be removed. So definitely a good card. I would say this is the lesser of all staples, like almost throughout this entire video, but it is definitely worth a mention that this has snuck its way into other decks other than Emu. And you do actually need to have an eye out for Mars in other decks as well. Definitely a tech option that could come in there. KOing 5-cost or less is just really powerful. This meta necessarily doesn't care too much about it. Ace has like a couple 5 or less, but not really anything that's too important to kill. But I mean, if you got like Soros running around, right, then boom, all of a sudden you're popping Cavendish, you're popping Tashigi, and that's just a bunch of value for you. So it's definitely a super strong card, and it's interesting to see that it has moved around from its Emu shell into other decks. Then I have Sabo on the list here. This is just a 2k counter, but it discounts itself by 3 if you have 15 or more cards in your trash. And obviously it's a blocker. So very similar to a Sanji that came out back in the day. This purple Sanji, which has a different condition, but basically makes it so it costs 3 less, and it has the same stat line and everything. But this card, the reason it's really good is because it's a blocker that you can play out for cheap, but it's outside of Mars range, which means Emu is going to struggle to get rid of this. Because it's a 6-cost on board, even though you played it for 3, it's still just a 6-cost on board. So Mars can't pop it, which means if the Emu wants to deal with it, they have to use their counter event, which is called something equilibrium. And that's a 6 Dawn thing, right? They can't cheat this out with stage like they can with Mars. So if they want to do 6 Dawn to just get rid of one of your Sabos, then by all means, I use 3 Dawn to play it, so I don't care. So as long as you're playing a black deck that can fill up your trash, this is by all means a staple in those decks. But mainly sees play in things like Sabo, of course. Then we have Stussy. This is like the most brain dead option for this meta. Ace is the best deck in the format, in my opinion. It's not the most represented, that still goes to Emu, but Ace is right behind after, and in my opinion, is way stronger than Emu. And unfortunately, Ace has a big glaring weakness. That is, he plays one big boy a turn, and so if you can just play a Stussy a turn, in response, they play Whitebeard. Boom, I play Stussy. You're gone. I establish a 9k body at the same time. Oh, you play another Whitebeard? Boom, I play another Stussy. Get rid of your Whitebeard. Now I've established a 9k body, and you have nothing. You've literally nothing to progress the board state whatsoever in like 2 turns, and that should be game over from there. So Stussy is just like a must-have in every single black deck at the moment. I mean, most decks run it at literally 4, just so you can consistently see it. 1 or maybe even 2, sometimes even 3 in a game against Ace. So super, super powerful card. This is just a must-have in every black deck. Unfortunately, it shouldn't be too expensive though. Probably have like the Cardmarket price somewhere up here. Even though it is played in every deck, it is still just a super rare end of the day, so probably shouldn't be too expensive. So make sure you pick up at least one playset of this, because it's played in every single black deck in this meta, and for good reason. Then we have Black Spiral. Black Spiral is a really interesting card. It keeps going up in value by the set. This first became a tech option in OP-12 when Zoro was around. Of course, Zoro is still around, but if you use this on Zoro, right, on their leader effect, first of all, they're going to be minus 4,000 for all the swings. But also, they're not going to be able to use their leader effect to restand their leader if they did swing into your board, right? So let's say they swing into your board, you use this to counter out of the attack, and now they can't restand to swing into your leader, or if they do use like a restand event, they're still minus 4k power. So really, really powerful at just shutting down everything that Zoro does. But now in OP-13, the value goes up even more, as it is a good play against Emu as well. I was told on stream the other day that if you use this, you can use this when they attack. Let's say they attack 7k with their Venus. Then you use this on their fucking Peter, like their Sankt Peter, which is the one that boosts everything to 7k. Use it on that one. Now the Venus is down to 5k. The fucking Peter is down to 1k. And like their entire board is down to 5k, right? So you can now way easier counter out of every single swing, and it's gonna just be a massive value play, especially if they're trying to push for lethal. They're gonna be caught off guard by this card and just not have enough power to finish the game out. So super, 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 super strong card in the Emu matchup as well. Definitely a must-have. Those are going to be the staples for black. Hopefully I went over them properly enough so that you understand why you would play certain cards or which ones you should consider in your deck. Quick mention right before we go on to the next colors. I think it's very clear that I am not going over leader-specific cards, right? I know I have Marcin here, but that's because it's technically not leader locked. But like, if I were to make a list, I'd put 5 Elders and Dragon in here, right? Because they're just incredibly strong cards. But obviously, they're only used in the respective decks. They're not really staples for the format as much as they are staples for specific decks that are good in the format. So just wanted to make that clear before we go into the other colors. Speaking of other colors, we got, what do we have next? Blue. Blue, funnily enough, gotta be one of the worst colors in this format. We got no fucking hacks whatsoever. I know I say this, like Ace isn't the best deck in the format, but the fact that they don't have any hacks whatsoever is what's keeping other decks from competing, other blue decks. These are the only 2 relevant cards, and I'm gonna go over Perfume Femur before we get started on Pudding, because that's a whole fucking mess, whereas Perfume Femur is pretty straightforward. Unblockable is really good against both Ace and Emu. So if you're playing a Warlord leader, then boom, all of a sudden you have access to Perfume Femur, and you can do really well in this format, even as an off-meta deck. Perfume Femur is literally just here on the list because blue is lacking so many hacks that I just had to mention Perfume Femur. Blue just doesn't have what it takes this format. Like, you have maybe I should give a mention to Marco, right? It's just an insane card. It is not locked at all, but it really only sees play in Ace still. Like there's not many other blue decks that are relevant in any way, shape, or form for them to have like Marco even make the cut here. However, Pudding is arguably the best deck in the not the best card in the entire format. Ace is the best deck in format, and Ace says, I want to draw cards, and I want to draw a lot of them. A lot of the times, unless you're playing a blue deck, right, and threaten with the pudding, Ace is gonna be sitting at 15 fucking cards for majority of the game. That deck draws cards like no fucking other, and it's actually just ridiculously insane. However, if you're playing a blue deck, you have access to pudding, which does one of two things. Wait, no, it does two things, right? One of the two things per game. It either threatens them that you have pudding and they're forced to counter out of attacks they don't really want to counter out of. And it forces them to play a completely different game than they were to if you were not a blue deck. Or they don't care about the pudding. They go up to 15 cards in hand, and would you look at that? You just used 4 Dawn to make your opponent lose 10 cards out of their hand. Mind you, it's not just minus 10 cards, it's also losing every sort of setup they've done with Searchers. Pudding instantly wins the Ace matchup, and I don't know if you noticed, Ace is the best deck in format, one of the most represented decks. If you can have one cheat card to just straight up win that matchup, then holy shit, are you in a good spot. So Pudding, obviously one of the most hated cards of all time in this card game, but it's just a really, really powerful card in this format. Moving on, we got the next color, which is going to be green. Green doesn't have too many cheats either, actually. One of the few deck colors that actually also is missing out in the format. I know we have Green Sorrow as the third best deck in the format, right? Whatever you want to call him. But he relies a lot on leader locked cards or cards that are just specifically good in Sorrow and weaker in other decks. I know Lim is also around, but Lim also just obviously plays the Odyssey package, so very many locked cards there as well, or cards that are just good because you can cheat them out for 3 Dawn and doesn't really perform in other decks. But I wanted to give a quick mention here to Mihawk. It is a card that is mainly played in Sorrow, but is just a really good card in generic green decks as well. Being able to cheat out the new 4-cost Sorrow film. Let's see, where is he? It's Sorrow and it's green. It is OP-13, this one. If your leader has the film or stride crew type, set up the 2 of your Dawn cards as active, and then end of your turn, set this character as active. In combination with this, you can play this for 1 Dawn, which is fucking ridiculous, and you still establish this. And this just restands itself end of turn, so we don't care that this plays rested. It's just an insane combo, and it's not just Sorrow that is going to be using this card. Because it is a 2k, as long as you have any form of 4-cost slash, you're going to be playing this card. It's just that good as a 2k. I just wanted to mention it as I have mentioned other 2Ks, like I mentioned Sabo when we went over black. It is just a really good 2K in this format. Then we have 9-cost Sorrow, and this is played in, I think, every single green deck except maybe Green Sorrow. It is just a really good answer to both Ace and Emu. Being able to just play this and then just having this loom over them as they might have 2 blockers and no life, or like a blocker and 1 life. It just is a great threat, especially in decks that are also red, because then you can threaten the unblockable Green Sorrow, which is an insane combo play, right? However, the problem with this card is that it is insufferably weak to both Red Rock and Stussy, which are 2 cards that both the best decks in the format are playing at the moment. So really sad to see that. Otherwise, I think green could have a good shot at actually contending with the meta decks simply because of this card. However, the weakness to Red Rock and Stussy is going to make it less powerful, but a well-timed Sorrow can win you games if you are just green, and I think it is still played in every single green deck. Then we have Shanks. Shanks is played mainly in Lim, but it is, in my opinion, a card that should be played in every single green deck. I play it in Uta, I play it in Red-Green Luffy. I know those aren't necessarily meta contenders, and this card also isn't necessarily meta countering or anything, so it doesn't feel right to be here along with cards like Stussy, right, that are specifically tailored for this meta. However, it being a 10-12 makes it really hard for both Emu and Ace to remove. Obviously, Ace can Red Rock it, and Emu can Stussy it, but since it's free to play, right, because you're still attaching all the Dawn, you don't really care that much. It's literally just not that bad. It's just a really, really strong card that just creeps its way into every single green deck. So this is definitely a card to look out for when playing against green. Then we have Demonic Aura 9 Sword Style Ashura Dead Man's Game, also known as DMG, Dead Man's Game, Ashura, whatever. You don't really say Demonic Aura 9 Sword Style very often. But this card is, of course, it's Tiny Hody, right? And Hody Jones has been around forever. Now Dead Man's Game is slowly but surely taking up that mantle, being basically the same card, but with a 3k counter on it. It's an absolutely insane card. In this meta, where Ace plays really big blockers and Emu plays counter events, but also blockers, it's really, really powerful. It's ridiculously powerful, even. To be able to rest two of those things. Like against Ace, right? Let's just say they have their fucking 10 Dawn turn and they just like play a Whitebeard and they already have like a Whitebeard on the board. Well, boom. Just like that, you have no blockers up. Let me just use my fucking 4 characters or whatever that I have on board now to either just completely drain your hand size or just go for lethal. Absolutely ridiculous card in this format. Definitely the #1 staple in green, in my opinion. Then we're going to go over what is next. It is going to be purple. Purple also being one of those decks that are kind of lacking on, like hacks, right? We do have 5 cards here, I know that, but it isn't actually 5 cards really. Let's go over them one by one, right? We have Magellan. Magellan is an insane card against both Emu and Ace. Also Roger, but Roger's not that relevant. But it is really, really powerful against Emu, taking them off curve and then just being a body that they cannot KO, or if they do, they absolutely demolish themselves, is really, really powerful. So really just a super strong card that can just mess your opponents up, right? Same with Ace, right? Taking them just 1 Dawn off of their curve is really powerful. In general, right, this entire meta is kind of a die roll meta, where if you go second, you kind of just win. So going first and then just dropping Magellan on 5 basically says, hey, you are playing on your first curve now too. And that's not what any deck wants to do in this format. All the decks wants to go second, so putting them onto the odd curve just makes it miserable for them to play. And then boom, just like that, maybe you have another Magellan, and now they're playing an entire turn behind, and you're just sitting there with your 5/6s that are just on the board, can't be removed. Just applying pressure every single turn. Super, super strong card. And funnily enough, in decks like Lakers Croc, you can now Okama way into Magellan, and all of a sudden, their entire game plan is over. Super, super powerful card. I wanted to go over these 2 Rogers as well. This Roger is just really fucking good. Obviously, it's just a 8/10 that gives plus 2,000 to your leader until the next end phase of your opponents. So just a really good card, and mainly it's played in blue, purple Luffy and Roger. But that's only because those are the only meta relevant purple decks that I know. I guess it's not played in Lim, but Lim has other hacks, right? She doesn't care about Roger. But like, I don't see why it wouldn't be played in other purple decks as well. It's just a really, really good card. And becoming a 7k lead, unless you're Roger, right? In which case you become a 9k lead. But like 7 or 8k lead, right, is really, really powerful in this meta, because Emu is a really, like, one of the most represented deck, if not the most represented deck. Swings just like 7s, right? And so if you can become bigger than that, then you are in an incredible spot to just fucking wait them out, stall them out, take your time, just keep being an 8k lead, and they're going to struggle to swing into that and actually apply the right amount of pressure on your leader. So just wanted to give Roger a mention. And then this Roger, I want to give a mention because this is not fucking locked at all. You can play this in whatever fucking purple deck you want. The only negative is that he turns off your leader effect and also the effects of your characters without a type, including Roger Pirates. But realistically, just fucking play this and then like just absolutely demolish it, right? A well-timed Roger is going to win you games. It's actually just an emu killer. Uh, Imagine this is the same as this Roger, but this is on crack because it also gives minus 2000 to all your opponent's shit. It's an absolutely insane card. And it's not locked at all, so you can play this in whatever fucking purple deck you want. If you just need that one extra turn, boom, 10 cost Roger. Oh, boom, now you establish a 13k body while you are a plus 2k leader and your opponent's characters are minus 2k. You will not die that turn. This card is insane. I just wanted to mention it is one of my favorite cards, if not my single favorite card to come out of OP-13. Moving on to these two events, we're going to take them one by one here. At the same time, because they do go into that same slot, right? We have Hell's Judgment, which saw play in OP-12 already. Dawn -1, give up to 2 of your opponent's leader or characters minus 3000 power during this turn. Everything that gives minus to things instead of giving plus to you is really good against Zoro, right? We went over this with Black Vortex, that... Like, if you could just give your opponent's Zoro leader minus 3000, it's just ridiculously good because now they're going to have minus 3000 even after they restand. And it's just a little bit ridiculous. There really isn't much more to say about this card. It has a really good trigger to basically be a mini Magellan, which is really powerful. But other than that, it's mainly used to negate Zoro's restand effect properly. And, you know, it's just a good counter event, right? It's just a 2 Dawn minus 3000, minus 3000, which is just a really good on-stat, no, not even on-stat, overstated counter event. So super powerful card. And then we have Noro Beam Sword. This is also one of those that are just ridiculously good. It's plus 2000, but then you can rest one of your opponent's characters. The fact that this doesn't specify cost or anything, you can just rest whatever the fuck you want, means that you can go on the aggressive with this against something like Ace, resting their Whitebeard blockers, so now they're tapped out on blockers, and you can go aggressive onto their face. And it also works really good against Emu, right? Because they also want to block her up. You can just use this, tap down their Valkyrie. Now they lose a lot of their defensive power. And it's just a really, really good card. Resting opponent's characters without cost restriction is really powerful in this format. Like we said with Dead Man's Game before, just resting things is powerful like crazy in this format. And that is just what purple does, right? They have just generic effects that like all other fucking colors have access to, but they just sometimes just do it better. With like Dawn minusing, right? So super, super powerful card. Should go in every purple deck, in my opinion, as just a just a counter to Ace. Super, super powerful. Other than that, let's go on to, I believe it's our last color now, or do we have 2 colors left? We have 2 colors left. Let's go over to red, and then we'll wrap it on with yellow. Red has a couple of hacks. I would say the absolute only like must include in every red deck is gonna be this Roger. We're gonna go over that soon. We're gonna start with Uta, but if you're looking at these, this is the must include. Uta is one of those cards that you really want to be including in your deck as long as your deck plays slightly big characters. The fact that the limit is 10,000 power means that Uta is basically always minus 4 cost. This is a 2k counter that costs 2, realistically, right? And it's a blocker, and just like with Sabo, the mention there is that it's just a cheap blocker that you can play out for cheap that is outside of Mars range. Every card that costs 5 or less that is a blocker, unless it has KO protection, it becomes immediately useless because Mars will just pop that shit no matter what. So just being a 6 cost is really, really good against Emu. Is also decent against other matchups, but mainly it's like against Emu, you cannot be in that 5 cost threshold. So just being outside of that, but still having access to both a 2k counter and the chump blocker makes this card really, really powerful. And it's played in both Ace and Roger, and I think it's played in a couple more red decks as well that I just can't think of off the top of my head. Absolutely busted card. Must have in your red decks. Then I kind of want to go over these three at the same time here, because these are like pseudo staples, but not really staples. These are just good emu answers. I guess that goes for Roger as well, but we'll go over him specifically. But Dragon here is just a good aggressive option to put on that pressure on Emu, as it is probably the most valuable rusher that we have that is of this size. Super powerful card. Being able to give 2 Dawn to your leader and then just swing with him as well is super aggressive and super powerful. Then we have Newgate. Newgate is just like Promo Roger, just another card that can give plus 2,000 to your leader, which is super powerful against Emu, right? Because they're gonna struggle to swing into you as easy as they would have otherwise. So definitely a powerful card indeed. And then we have Shanks, which again is basically just another Emu counter, because your Emu is going so freaking wide, and this just gives minus 1,000 to everything. So all of a sudden, instead of their entire board being 7Ks, they're now 6Ks, which is not as powerful as a 7K board, obviously. If you want to look at it as if it makes you can pretend like it gives your leader plus 1,000 power. It's not quite the same, but it is similar. The only difference is, one of the differences is that this sticks on board, right? Unlike Newgate and Roger, this gives for the turn, right, plus 2,000, whereas this is just like, as long as this is on board, all your opponent's characters have minus 1,000 power. So it's a really, really strong card, and if you can start chaining these, then Emus doesn't stand a chance at all, because their board is simply going to be too small to deal with their characters, and they're not going to be able to apply the pressure that they want either. So super, super strong card against Emu specifically. And then we have Roger. This card we have to go over a little bit more in depth. This card is the card that is completely wrapping its hand around this meta. I think this card went from like a 0.5 euro card to now being worth 15 euros, simply because it's a staple in every single red deck in this format. You play it in Ace, you play it in Roger, you play it in Sabo, you play it in Red Green Luffy, you play it in... You have to play it in every single deck that is red. And there is 2 reasons for this. One, Emu revolves around blockers heavily. And 2, Ace revolves around blockers heavily. The 2 best decks in format require you to have access to unblockable in some way, shape, or form. And Roger is the one card that is like, he has value, right? Because he becomes a 10-13 swing. So it's a good power swing. But he makes your entire board unblockable, assuming that you have 0 life or that your opponent has 0 life. If your opponent has 0 life, it's game over once you drop this, but you force yourself down to 0 life to play this is super powerful. It's even come to the point where people are playing, let's see if we can find him, this Sanji, to take your own life to make it so that this is live earlier. And in Ace, you also have access to this guy, because this is also anti-starve. It's also a 2K that is anti-starve, to put Roger into a better zone. Like, you can take yourself down to 0 and then force the unblockable from your entire board and this 13K swing. So Roger is a very, very important card in this meta, and just having ways to bring yourself down to 0, because you can pre-play this, right? Like, I know it costs 10, so you can't like play it and then starve your anti-starve, but you can pre-play it, swing with it, you know, it's still a 13K rusher, and then the next turn you can force yourself down to 0, and then you just win on the spot, because both of the best decks in format rely way too heavily on blockers. So it is just a super, super, super good card. You must have this if you are playing red. I'm sorry if I went over that for way too long. I need you guys to understand that this card is a must-have. And then last but not least, we have yellow. Also, not very many staples here. I kind of struggled to make this list at all. But I'm going to go over Hiyori and Kuma at the same time here. Hiyori and Kuma, these are just generic, good yellow cards. These both heal. That's what they do, right? They just heal, 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 heal. Hiyori can block and heal, and Kuma heals on play, and if they kill it, you heal again. So they both basically defend 2 swings in one, if you want to see it that way, right? and you don't even like the cost is trashing a card. Who cares about trashing a card? You're getting a life for it, so you're getting that card back anyways. So it's really just ridiculously good healing cards that can help your deck go into the late game if that is what your deck wants, which in my opinion yellow decks in general want. Then we have Boa Hancock. This is just a fucking Zoro counter. I know, like, it feels stupid to have this many Zoro counters mentioned in this video, considering Zoro is like by far the least played deck out of the big three. But he is, for some reason, still recognized as one of the big three. So you should still be teching for him if you are going into any bigger tournaments. And Boa, of course, being able to stun one of your opponent's rested leader or characters other than Luffy, makes this just a really good counter to Zoro. Because all of a sudden, your Zoro is sitting there and he's like, oh, well, my plan was to play Tashigi and then swing 8, and then swing 8, and then swing 8, and then swing 8 again. But now I can't swing it all. What do I do? I'm such a big, dumb brain Zoro player. I don't know how to play around this. That was a fully realistic reenactment of what happens when you play Boa against a Zoro. They don't know what to do when they can't attack with their leader. In fact, they can't do anything, which is why they probably don't know what to do. But nonetheless, that is still the case. Boa is really, really strong against Zoro. But it is also decent against decks like Ace. Of course, they rely very much on their big body Whitebeards. And when they, when you swing and they block with it, boom, now you can't attack with it anymore because this has no cost restriction whatsoever. But it does make you build your entire deck around triggers a little bit because you need to trash specifically a card with a trigger. So that is something to keep in mind when putting this into your deck. And then the last card of this entire video is going to be Flame Split on the sim, but it is called Blaze Slice on your actual cards in real life. It's a 1-cost main and counter event. Give up to one of your leader or characters plus 1000 power for the turn. After this, if your opponent has 2 or less life, rest up to one of your opponent's 4-cost or lower characters. I can tell you exactly why this card is played and why you should play it. 2 names are only thing I need, right? Warcury is a 4-cost, and so is Marco. I'm sorry. So the 2 best blockers in the game right now can be rested by this. I know it's weird that we have resting things in yellow, but we do, and it's a good card. On your turn, it's free to play because you boost it for 1000, so you're not even wasting the Dawn, right? So you're literally just getting a free rest of their Warcury or Marco when pushing for lethal. And on the defensive, it's also really good because you give plus 1000 for the turn. So against, let's say I'm playing against Emu, right? They got their entire board of 7k swings. Well, fuck me, dude. I guess I'll just counter here, plus 1000, rest your fucking Warcury, so now you're not swinging with that. And then I'll also give you a 2k. And now every attack is just a 2k instead of a 2k, 1k, right? It's really, really powerful. And just really good defensive way. And just resting your opponent's forecast is really good, both on the defensive and on the offensive, right? So super good against both Ace and Emu, which is why this card should be a staple in all of your yellow decks. Those are going to be all the staples that we mentioned today. Hopefully you picked up something in this video to might change the way you build your decks in OP-13, and hopefully you can help me fight these stupid ugly meta decks in Emu, Ace, and maybe even Zoro. Zoro is like barely a meta deck at this point, bro. I've seen like one in the last 5 years. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to leave a like on the video and subscribe as well if you want to see more content like this. Other than that, I will see you in the next one. Peace.